Jungle.
Sort of, kind of, a little bit, but this one is dealing with a Inuit hunter.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, it was a very popular book that was written in 1963. They planned a film adaptation in the 70s after the screenwriter and director Norman Jewison, who had uh, directed films such as The Heat of the Night, In the Heat of the Night, Fiddler on the Roof.
Oh my God. Yes. I knew
Yes,
I recognized that
he
name
is.
from somewhere.
Yes, Moonstruck, The Cincinnati Kid, Jesus Christ Superstar, uh, The Thomas Crown Affair, the 1968 version, The Hurricane with Denzel Washington. He had purchased the rights and he wanted to do an adaptation, but this film, some have said, is cursed.
Dun, dun, dun.
Every main, and it's like supposedly this film that this screenplay has been responsible for the deaths of at least 5 famous Hollywood actors.
Wow.
Yes, and one other person who was going to be either producer or something like that. So we'll get to those guys in a minute, but let me go through the plot of Atuk
All right.
so people know what the story is. So the novel, in the novel, Atuk is a Canadian Inuit poet from Baffin Islands, which is one of the territories in Canada, who gets transplanted to Toronto. But in the screenplay, they changed it to he's a native of Alaska who ends up in New York. Atuk, in the screenplay, Atuk was to be a son of an Inuit mother and a missionary who dreams of seeing the world outside of an Inuit territory of Alaska. He sees his chance with a beautiful documentarian named Michelle Ross and her crew, who arrive to film the village which he lives in. Atuk stows away in Michelle's plane when her crew takes off for another village. After the crew lands in Canada, Michelle discovers Atuk and has no other choice but to take Atuk with her past the border into America. The two end up in New York City. Meanwhile, a powerful real estate mogul named Alexander McCurran is planning to erect a massive metropolis on top of Alaska's wilderness called the Emerald. McCurran is clashing with environmentalists over the project because they claim the city will poison the ecosystems there. McCurran is also having problems with his 16-year-old son, Bishop, an underage drinker and smoker who's a terror at his school. Bishop goes joyriding in his boat while he's supposed to be punished and crashes near a pier where Atuk is and begins to drown. Atuk jumps in and saves Bishop. They befriend one another and Bishop takes Atuk on a night on the town. Alexander decides to have Atuk stay at their mansion until they can put him up in one of their hotels, something McCurran's wife Vera objects to. McCurran reveals to Atuk that Michelle works for him and tells Atuk he wants him to be part of an image campaign for McCurran's project, which Atuk agrees to. Bishop is then sent off to military school and is angry at Atuk for having sold him out to his father. Michelle and Atuk travel back to Alaska to shoot the commercials for McCurran's Emerald Project in an attempt to reassure the environmentalists who are critical of this project. Atuk is put into a dark makeup and put through primal Inuit paces, which makes him feel unnatural. But as they work together, Atuk and Michelle realize that they like each other very much. At the viewing of the commercial, Atuk realizes that by editing, McCurran has used him to sell his message. Atuk, now knowing that he's been taken advantage of, breaks Bishop out of military school and is using a dog sled, hurries to the hearing about the plans of the Emerald and convinces everyone there that he was wrong to endorse McCurran's plan because the project will be bad for the land. With all the investors in the project pulling out, McCurran and Bishop reconcile. Atuk returns to his village, but the next day Michelle arrives in a plane asking him to go to Hawaii with her. Atuk accepts and the two fly off on a plane with Bishop as the co-pilot. That's the movie.
Okay.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it sounds
if
they could do a lot with that, especially with the direction of someone like Norman Jewison. But go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds interesting. It's like again deal with the environment and racism, and it sounds interesting. I don't know if I would see it on the first, like unless it's like a great trailer, but still. But here's a story of how they tried to develop this movie. Norman Jewison purchased the rights to the film in 1971, and he planned to shoot it in Canada after he was done filming the film Jesus Christ Superstar. The first person he approached to play Atuk was John Belushi.
Hmm.
Now, if people are not familiar with John Belushi was one of the original actors on Saturday Night Live. He was one of the first. Him and Dan Aykroyd and Gilda Radner and Chevy Chase. There was just Jane Curtin, just to name a few. He started. Where was he? He was from Chicago. He was born in Chicago. He started at Second City. He really blew up because of Saturday Night Live, and also he ended up leaving Saturday Night Live and going to star in movies. Animal House, which was big, and the Blues Brothers.
Sure, everyone in Chicago knows obviously what the Blues Brothers are.
Yeah,
Belushi's
yeah,
a bit of a
and
legend, isn't he?
yeah, he is. He is a legend. I didn't know his parents were Albanian
Okay. Yeah.
Americans. Huh. Yeah. Yeah, he got it started. He really blew up. He was really blowing up because of this.
So they approached him like
he
at
approached
what
him.
point in his career?
This was pretty much at first they approached him when he was on Saturday Night Live, and he was thinking about it. And then after he left Saturday Night Live, he accepted the role. So he finally accepted. But before they were able to start filming, John Belushi, on March 5th, 1982, John Belushi was found dead in his hotel room in the Chateau Mott in Hollywood, California, of a drug overdose.
Yeah, I mean, everybody who's interested in comedy or knows like comedy from the 70s and 80s knows John Belushi's story. Tragic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it was really, man, this is, I mean, I was like one, and I barely knew who and what anything was, but still, like, especially going back, like, because I like the Blues Brothers. Like, I really enjoyed that
Sure.
movie. And then just go, oh man, he's gone, and yeah, but he had a lot of demons. He was struggling with drug and alcohol addiction and shit like that. So yeah, so that's one. Okay, so the production kind of, instead of like canceling the movie altogether, they decided to keep going
How
forward.
far along were they in
production.
the production?
Pre-production.
Pre-production, so nothing had been shot yet.
Nothing had been shot, but they still kept going on. They were like, look, we want to shoot this movie, we want to do this movie. So they said they gave a date in which they were going to begin production on a talk, and it was February 1988. They decided to go with another comedian. This one you might not know, but I remember this guy, a comedian named Sam Kinison.
I'm looking at him right now. I don't really recognize his face, but what is he famous for?
He was a stand-up comedian. He was a former Pentecostal preacher. That's what he said. He was a stand-up comedian actor. He was a former Pentecostal preacher who got like really famous. He decided he wanted to do comedy. From age 17 to 24, he was doing preaching like the fire brimstone kind, because that's how his father was a preacher too. So he decided, I want to do that. Then he was like, I want to make a change after he divorced his first wife. he was like, look, I want to take up comedy. So he began his career in Houston, Texas, performing at small clubs, became a member of the comedy workshop, uh, and he's really started to get like noticed for his comedy. Like his big break came from Rodney Dangerfield, another Vegas comic. They did a special on HBO in 1985, and he really killed it. So from there, he made appearances on Late Night with David Letterman and other late night shows, and he was cast in Rodney Dangerfield movie, which became a hit in 1986. Back to school. I mean, his life was really he was really blowing up at that time. And actually, if you go on YouTube right now, you can see one of his sets. Like today, his jokes would not fly today. It would not fly.
Like today. Human sexuality and sort of taboo subjects back then.
Yeah, but he was like, I remember him a little bit at that time. Yeah, he was funny, like especially in Back to School. He plays one of the professors because Rodney Dangerfield is like, you ever see the movie Back to School? Rodney Dangerfield is a successful businessman that's going through a divorce. He wants to reconnect with his son, and his son's away in college, so he decides to go back because he never got his college degree, Rodney Dangerfield's character, so he decides to go back to college to try to get his degree and try to, like, it's because he keeps instilling to his son, like, you need your college degree, but I never got his, so he ends up going back to school, and it's like zany and shit, and Sam Kinison plays one of his professors, and there's a scene where Rodney Dangerfield had been drinking the night before and stuff, and he didn't know the answer, and Sam Kinison just goes, don't you know the answer? Don't you know the answer? Do you? It's like, I can't do his impression of him. But if you go on YouTube and you search clips Back to School Sam Kinison, you'll see the scene, and it's freaking hilarious because he's just screaming at Rodney Dangerfield, doing oh, and just yelling at him and shit. So it is funny. It's funny. So. But the thing with this is they approached Sam Kinison for the role. He accepted, and they actually started filming. They went in production in 8 days. Sam Kinison filmed one scene, and that was it. Now, why they stopped filming is up for debate. Supposedly, how the story goes is Sam Kinison hated the script, and he wanted it rewritten. And the people that were making the film was like, no, we're not going to rewrite now. They said, some people say they fired him because he kept complaining about the script and saying that he was going to, if the script had stayed the way it was, he wasn't going to give it full effort. Others say that Sam Kinison had the script rewritten and brought the script to production and gave it to the director, and they were like, absolutely fucking not, fire this guy. So they ended up stopping production. They fired Sam Kinison from the role, and they sued him. And Kinison, in turn, sued the production company, United Artists. Sam Kinison, in turn, countersues United Artists. So they were doing this whole suing thing, but they had filmed one scene, and no, it hasn't seen the light.
And I guess United said that he was allegedly giving a less than stellar performance in order to sabotage the movie, it says in here.
Mm-hmm. And from his people, he said, I don't like the script. I want to rewrite. And he had someone rewrite the script, and he brings it in, and United Artists was like, no.
Okay.
Kiss my ass. And they fired him. So what happened to Sam? They stopped production, and Sam moves on to other things. Actually, the whole thing was bankrupting him because he hadn't gotten paid for the performance, and he was spending a lot of his money fighting this case. So he had to go back on the stand-up road. So back on stand-up and on the road. So what had happened to Sam is on Friday, April the 10th, 1992, Sam was driving his Pontiac Trans Am